Hey, everybody, welcome back to the Level Up podcast, where we talk to some of the brightest engineering leaders about DevOps and what it takes to build great products, teams, and companies. I'm your host, Ken Rose, co-founder and CTO at Ops Level. And today I'm here with Andreas Westendörpf, CTO at Emma Sleep. Emma Sleep is a worldwide sleep brand selling mattresses, pillows, and everything you need for a good night's sleep. Since the company started in 2015, they've scaled incredibly quickly and now ship to 30 different countries with millions of happy customers. Andreas joined Emma back in 2020 and has been leading a replatforming effort to allow Emma to continue to scale. We'll be talking with Andreas today about that journey. Andreas, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Ken. I'm super excited to be here.
So first off, why don't you tell us a little bit about Emma Sleep and sort of the early days of the company?
So as you mentioned, I joined the company 2 years ago, but from what I already could see back then, it was an incredible story to tell. Because imagine the company is only 8 years old, but has essentially doubled its business and its revenue every 12 to 24 months. So we are a company that is on a stellar growth trajectory, that we have been growing almost exponentially, although we are selling physical goods. And while being profitable since 2017. That's also a very remarkable characteristic. But if I can put everything that Emma is into one place, it's actually not so much about the mattresses or the products, but about the people that are able to have this business scaling like it is. It is an incredible company culture, and a good amount of what makes it so successful is actually the cultural DNA of it.
Can you talk maybe a little bit, what are some of the aspects or pillars of that culture?
So at Emma, for example, although we are not a startup anymore, we consider ourselves a scale-up company. We are pretty much firm believers in a lot of the paradigms and principles you would actually find at startup tech companies. We are deep believers, and it is deeply rooted in the company company cultural DNA that we want to work in an agile fashion. And if I say agile, I don't mean Scrum, I don't mean Kanban. It's not about the process. It's actually never about the process. It is so much more about having smart ideas, having those hypotheses, testing them out in a very smart and lean way, and then iterate through execution. And this is only one of many what we call leadership principles that we apply at Emma. Also, the company, although we're almost 1,000 people by now, we are very lean, very flat hierarchy. We take decisions in a very decentralized fashion. There are no approval boards. There are no budgets or these alike, because we believe that when we are able to move as autonomously and as concurrently as possible, we can achieve way more, because we're not doing one or two things in a year, but we're doing 10, 15, 20 things at once. Sometimes a bit chaotic, sometimes a bit volatile, but we make sure that with the smart and brilliant heads we have in the company, that we actually achieve a lot. And that you can see, the success is actually, I think, a strong sign of exactly these principles making us strong.
So Andreas, one of the things, one of the initiatives you started when you joined was a sort of major replatforming effort, right? To help kind of Emma scale its people, its process, its technology. I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about that. And I'd love to pull on that thread you just brought up about this very decentralized mode. Can you maybe hint a little bit about how are your teams structured, and how did you set up that organization to allow for that just fast iteration?
Sure thing. Emma didn't start as a tech company. We are an e-commerce company. In the first years, technology has not been, let's say, so much of a strategic concern, more an enabling element in business development, but not so much a key driver of what is possible and what is not. That's changed, and when I arrived 2 years ago in late 2020, the company had actually been in a very interesting state, because the technology parts of it were reflecting also pretty much how the interactions between the teams were. And the technology platform it was using is a very monolithic, highly customized, very monolithic architecture. One that has been customized and fitted to the purpose fit to everything that the business wanted over the years during that extensive growth. But what happened is that it accumulated tons and tons of technical debt, of process debt, of organizational debt, and in the end, what the symptoms of that became, that became very visible, is that you can only do little things at once, changes that you want to do. What looks like a simple HTML or CSS change in the front end took forever to implement, but because it's if looking at it, there's dynamic elements that come with it, so it's actually not only front end. You're also in the back end, then you're also in DevOps. So you need a team of 3, 4, 5, sometimes 8 people to just get that little thing delivered. And we had so many teams. As you said, we were doing business today in 34 countries, and back then already it was more than 20. We had so many business teams wanting to develop their business and be business agile, really super having a super short feedback loop with the markets that they were developing. And our technical teams and also the technical platform could not cater for that because it all had to go through the same meat grinder, and it didn't work. Everything became slow. Working in the business as a business developer in one of our country teams needed something, a problem to be solved, a solution to be deployed. And depending on the priority of that feature of that change that you wanted, it turned out to be something that in 2 months somebody would have the time to look at. And that is not agile in any meaning of the word anymore. And what became very clear to me was that not only the technical architecture was not fitting anymore, but also the organizational architecture was not fitting. And for the magnitude of the business, back then we were already doing triple-digit millions of revenue per year. And for the magnitude that what we are heading for, and next year we want to basically surpass the 1 billion euro of revenue. That is not feasible in such monolithic architecture and in such in such a way of working where the teams would wait so long, and business lead times, time to market times are just so incredibly long. And in that sense, this combination of changing the technical architecture as well as the organizational setup, that made a lot of sense to me, and that's what we called then replatforming.
Nice. Can you talk a little bit about the types of examples that some of those business representatives were trying to do? Is it things like launching in a new market or locale changes, or what are some things that you were some changes you were trying to affect that just were really slow?
Yeah, these are basic business development. Sometimes it's introducing a new product, it's running campaigns. The business in the sleepwear industry is actually quite seasonal. So you have pretty high peaks during, for example, Black Friday, which is
around the corner.
Around the corner, exactly. So you have very high seasonality, very high peaks, and a lot of marketing measures and campaigns that are being done in the different geographies. And with that setup of just a couple of teams that were managing the monolithic platform, this did not give this business agility or this flexibility of reacting to changes also in user behavior, or new payment service providers to be integrated, or new payment methods, these kinds, or shipping methods, new pieces and partners in the supply chain. So there are always changes, and this multitude of changes basically raining down on your backlog is actually creating a big problem, because at some point you're just not able to cope with it anymore, and that's and just increasing capacities is actually not working, because you're hitting a hard limit of what you can do in parallel in such a system. Also with the CI/CD you're using, you can there is certain limitations how much can be done and be run in parallel, and we are already hitting those.
You talked a little bit about, by the way, there's so many things I want to pull on there, but one of the things was you talked a little bit about like limits of sort of both the architecture as a monolith and also the organization. Can you tell me a little bit about what was the starting point for that? Like, it sounds like there was this giant monolith ball of mud and a bunch of teams hammering on it. And where did you end up? What's the architecture look like today, and where are you trying to get to?
So the old architecture was actually an open source based e-commerce system. It was Magento 1, pretty common one, but also quite old one by now. It by now was replaced by an open source version that is OpenMage. However, it exactly suffered from too much technical depth, and also not really a lot of architectural planning and foresight that you have when you are in startup mode. In the startup environment, you are in survival mode. You need to deliver functionalities, features today and tomorrow. You want to please the business, or you want to have your business running, but you cannot really think about what is around the corner, what is coming next, what will hit you in a year or two. So back then that was actually good decision making, and we were fast with that. But at some point you're reaching what is the glass ceiling of what is possible on your current architecture, and you need to go for the next one and basically do that step change. And that was basically when we, like 2 years ago, we saw that we were reaching the end of the monolith, and looking what is there out now. Fortunately enough, the starting point, and I spoke with a couple of fellow CTOs that were in e-commerce as well, and we're living with a lot of the, let's say, legacy of the big cloning phase. Back in the early 2000s, a lot of companies who did business developed their own systems. Some of them even became providers. And what happens usually, or happened back then, if you go to a new geography, you would clone your system and run a clone of your system that you had in geography A and geography B. And I spoke with a couple of them, and they were really, really frustrated, because a good amount of them wanted to do the same, wanted to do replatforming, but would need to get to a harmonized state before, because after a couple of years of running clones, guess what? The clones develop themselves, and even the data models don't match anymore. So you have you would need to spend years of harmonization and consolidation before you would even be able to go for replatforming, to apply new technology. Fortunately for Emma, that was not the case, because we never cloned. We were always running the same system, the very same code base for all countries. And also the ERP system that we used was not, so it was also a single one. It was not highly customized. So we had a kind of better starting conditions than most of the other companies that went through cloning. And back then we started looking what is in the market. We set a couple of very important software design and software architecture principles that we wanted to ensure, that so we don't go in or build something or build the next monolith, or worse, build a monolith with proprietary software that we're not even able to change anymore. And you can also read that on our tech blog, but that was super relevant for us. And actually, to a certain, it was kind of a coincidence that's and fortunate for us that in the same time, so 2020, 2021, there was a lot of companies that were applying in or becoming more visible in the e-commerce domain, that wanted to apply new and modern software technology principles in e-commerce. E-commerce has been like it was for decades now, because it was one of the first places where you could earn money on the internet. Not the very first one, but one of the first. And because the dominating architecture back then was monoliths, there was nothing else in the late 90s and the early 2000s. It is something that is still around because they were dominating for long. Fortunately, now these new players, and these are these composable commerce players, these can actually now help you design solutions and architectures that are way more purpose fit, that are not as clunky and enterprisey as the big vendors of enterprise software that you're trying to sell to you, all that, like these highly integrated monoliths again. But these are very purpose-fit small solutions that are API first, cloud native, and already mentioned now two of the acronyms of what actually eventually became a thing, that is the Mach Alliance, which is what I'm really excited about, and actually I'm also even an ambassador for, because I, as a software engineer myself, I waited so long for modern technology to come into e-commerce, and finally it happens now, and fortunately even with a cool name. So that's Mach. Microservices, API first, cloud native, and headless.
That's amazing. Can you talk a little bit more about just that Mach architecture? And it sounds like that's the end state that you're trying to get to at Emma. Can you talk about how that alliance came up, and what that future state kind of looks like?
So how the alliance came up, or that is kind of an industry association. So I'm not too sure about it. Actually, we designed our systems without even knowing that there was Mach around. But it was good timing that we discovered it, because we already had selected a couple of the vendors that are members of the Mach Alliance as preferred solution providers for our new stack. The first and most important thing about such a composable commerce stack is that you don't need a final design. Final is not like the imperfection, and this like the change is part of the actually of the principles why you would choose a certain solution. Because as I said, these are not as those big clunky. I don't know, you buy a software X and you never can change it again because I don't know, the investments are the investments are frozen, and I don't know, you can never change that again. They're way more purpose fit, way leaner, and you can actually today use an e-commerce backbone or a promotion engine or a order management system, and decide in 2 years, 3 years down the road that you might need another one, and actually can rapidly replace that.
Right. It sounds optimized for composability, like you're really optimizing
it is
for
all
change.
About this. Exactly. It's all about the change, the flexibility of changing components. We defined what we called business domains back then. So what are the essential parts of functionality and data pools within our business? And for somebody in e-commerce, that's something like the storefront. Then there's something about the e-commerce backbone, order management, fulfillment, warehouse management, downstream with the supply chain. And for each of those, we wanted to deliberately decide which is the best system, deliberately decided to not go with a highly integrated approach, because we want that flexibility. We want to be able to adapt and to modify according to our business needs, and not be dependent on vendors allowing us to. So, and that is essentially the new architecture that we built. We even gave it a name. It's the Emma Commerce Operating System, so Emma COS. We call it, and we're kind of proud about it, because it's really probably, so to my understanding, it's the most modern composable commerce solution in the industry, from ordering online on our online shop to having the box with the mattress being delivered to your doorstep, so the entire supply chain. And we basically turned every stone in that journey, and every system that is used.
I'd love to dive into like kind of how you turn those stones, right? Like I can imagine in this switch from the original monolithic system to this much more composable system, you're having to address a lot of like early design decisions and somewhat early product decisions. And how do you kind of balance that? Like, was there this desire to keep 100% compatibility with all of your existing features and capabilities? Or did you have to make trade-offs as like, hey, we have this new technology, but this one feature we're not going to support anymore. We're going to actually call it. And how did you what was your framework for making those decisions?
The first and foremost, you need to understand what your business actually is. And if you're a startup that went through hypergrowth, actually there's nobody by then somehow illustrated or created documentation about the process. So actually that was something that we did in the very first phase of the project. We re-engineered our D2C business and basically had software engineers interviewing business stakeholders understanding what we were actually doing how the business process is actually running. And yes, there's a couple of things that you need to have in mind. If you want to just rebuild everything as is, then you're also rebuilding all the customizations, the workarounds, the bending something around a corner where you shouldn't have done. And that's actually, we wanted to avoid that. So there's place in between or in the middle where you have, like, say, the basic or minimal feature set that is valid for actually doing business on almost the same level or maybe even better level than your old system landscape. But you want to avoid anything that creates a lot of complexity, because the entire idea is to be able to do this entire revamp within 2 to 3 years. If you're planning for 4 years or 6 years, don't do it. This is just because you need a year for mobilization. You need a year to get everything ready. The CI/CD, the teams, the capabilities, the new tech stack, everything. Have the vendors tested out and selected. And the second year is all about performing execution. Third year after the second year is about cleaning up and getting, let's say, getting from 90% to 100%. But the second year is about getting from 0 to 90%. You need to be fast. And if that is your goal, you need to regularly challenge yourself. Also challenge your approaches. Sometimes deliberately decide to not do something. And that is sometimes even comes with downsides in the business, and comes with with cost of business you're not doing.
So Andreas, do you have can you provide an example of a time that your team had to make a decision not to invest in an existing area to adopt the new technologies?
Yeah. So given the fact that the entire business that we're doing has developed so rapidly and had went through hypergrowth, we were also facing a lot of complexity in certain parts of it. So we, for example, decided that we want to do the D2C part first in the transformation of the replatforming effort, because this is the majority of the business, while the wholesale and B2B part is it's the minor part of it. Yet it also yields a lot of complexity, and we wanted to make sure that we have the high volume processes implemented and the systems ready, so we can also use those where appropriate and where purpose fit also for the wholesale side. So, but this comes with a different timeline, and we kind of created a second work stream for the wholesale part, making sure that it gets also adequately covered, but it comes also with different timing.
Got it. So it sounds like the focus really was get a phenomenal B2C experience, scale your systems on that, and cut your teeth there, and then you can come back later in your life as a business and continue focusing on wholesale.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. Now, I want to touch on, we talked a lot about the technology side. I want to touch on like the people and team side, because when we started our conversation, you talked about kind of like, you saw challenges in both, right? A little bit of Conway's Law, shipping kind of not even shipping the org chart, but the technology reflected, or sorry, the org reflected the technology. Can you talk about how your teams are aligned today? You kind of touched on business domains. Do you align teams to business domains, or how have you actually structured your teams for execution in this new world?
Yeah, so maybe I need to start a little bit earlier on that. Is I worked long enough in like as a software engineer, and that's one of the two beating hearts in my chest. Is I'm like in the depths of it. I'm still a software engineer wanting to work with the most modern and coolest technology that is around. But I worked for a couple of years in team structures that were what you call today a feature factory. So, and when I arrived here 2 years ago at Emma, also the collaboration between our business teams and the software development team back then was also more like a feature factory. So it was on the one side of the table, the business always basically always right because they own revenue, and they would ask for features, and they would ask for functionalities, and the other side of the table, the implementing software development teams. And this is not only not so fun models to work in, but also it's not very effective, because a lot of times there is so much loss in translation, and this entire understanding of the problem is not really a part of the process here. Today we do it very differently, and that's the second of the two hearts of that beat in my chest. Is I'm a big fan and enthusiast of empowered product teams. Work using the nomenclature and the words of Marty Kagan of the Silicon Valley Product Group here, but essentially a lot of companies and organizations came to the same conclusion. That is, if you want to create a team and have a team build a compelling product that will really delight its customers, it's more effective, more or less risky, and it's way more fun to do this in a setup where you have all the necessary skills to succeed within the team, instead of building teams depending on teams, and cascading for your organization, and everybody waits for everybody. Instead of that, build up team structures, what is called empowered product teams, that have everything within the team that they need to proceed. And they had and the full idea about it is, or the entire idea about it is, to have as little dependencies as possible on other teams or on other teams, and make them fast. And this is how we do it today. We structure the teams along the business domains that I was talking about earlier. So we have today 3 teams in the online store group of products. There we have, for example, the catalog and platform team, the content experience team, and the checkout team, following also the customer journey. And then there's this more asynchronous part after an order is placed with us, where it is entering the product group of the fulfillment backbone, where we have order management, we have the topic of distribution of the order data in our very big and also complex supply chain. We call this integration middle layer. Then we have warehouse management. We have all these different domains where these products live, and a product team, and that's the essential thinking here, is working well if they can really deliver on their own, and they have as little as possible waiting stays. And that's what we designed for highly effective, not only collaboration, but highly effective driving of the business. And these teams actually also do discovery. Feature teams don't do discovery. They really try to understand the problem that they're solving, and design solutions for these problems, instead of delivering what maybe nobody needs. And that was a big problem in the past.
It sounds like you switched from kind of, I'm going to call it a sales type of culture where it's like, hey, the business is kind of just saying like, go build this, to more a product oriented culture where it's like autonomous teams that aren't siloed are able to actually execute, understand a problem and solve it holistically.
Yeah. To be honest, in a company like ours, also product itself, it's a very common thing in tech these days. However, if you're in a company that sells physical products, you need to really well explain product.
Yeah.
Because you might find yourself with somebody thinking of product as pillow or as category, as beds or mattress, and then you're talking about the checkout product, and you need to find common ground also with your stakeholders here.
I was wondering, can you talk a little bit about where does sort of, I'm going to call it platform engineering fit into this? You mentioned you have CI and CD. Who's responsible for that sort of set of concerns, and how have you structured that team?
So the cool part was so we basically did not migrate any functionality or any data from the old platform to the new platform. And in that sense, we were able to build it really from scratch on the greenfield. And we did that in a way. We had a couple of very experienced DevOps engineers joining us early. When we started the transformation, this was one of our work streams. So there was a work stream about the online store, one about the order management, and one about especially the underlying CI/CD, the software delivery or software development life cycle, the process, as well as the toolings, the cloud, everything that a software engineer needs to integrate and to deliver. And we designed this in a very easy to apply way for the engineer. And today we have about 65 engineers working on these technology stacks and a very small team of what we call developer experience, so we call it DevX, that is actually running that platform in a very lean way. Making sure that the individual software engineer or the platform is very friendly to the individual software engineer, but without exposing exposing valuable assets. So nobody goes on prod. So you have all like a couple of core principles deeply installed in that software developer experience. Vision and implementation.
Okay, it sounds like they are almost a product team in and of themselves, is that their focus is not so much on the end user journey, but on your developers' journeys inside of them.
Exactly. So they are, and that's also if you can, you should always try to think through the eyes of your coworker here, and that's what they are actually doing. They have designed a very powerful yet lean platform that the other teams can develop on, and also offer functionalities like credential management and these things to them. So make it also easy to monitor, easy to have observability, easy to log. So everything that a developer needs. And in a way, yes, they're our internal customers. But I think the most important thing here again is culture, because when we built the entire or rebuilt the entire organization, it was clear to everybody that DevOps and really also the ownership that comes with DevOps is at its core. So we cannot build a platform like this and have an ops team, because this would mean that this ops team would scale with the amount of stuff that we do in the different product teams, and it would be not healthy. So we pretty much defined this as a very early principle, that ownership comes with that, and that the teams need a good amount or a good level of maturity to actually also live that ownership.
Yeah, ops teams, it's almost the siloing that you were talking about before, and having teams that are blocking and having handoffs, as opposed to having end-to-end ownership, right, within an individual team at Emma.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask you one final question here. You wrote something that kind of nerd sniped me a little bit around build versus buy, right? Because normally the common wisdom is, build versus buy, outsource everything that's not your core competency. But you wrote, and let me find it here.
It's a make and rent. And
yes, make and rent, and build what you can do better than others, even if it's not your core business. And I was wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on that. And are there any examples at Emma of things that you folks are building that aren't your core business, but you're doing better than everybody else?
I believe we have had a good amount of examples in the industry. What companies that thought about making their internal solutions multi-tenancy capable early were able to pull off, and that was pretty powerful. It doesn't always require the like giants like Amazon to do so. If you're really good, and we are pretty good in marketing, by the way. So we're a powerhouse of marketing. So there's two things that come together at Emma with so many bright minds. We have really good products. And they are usually frequently winning prizes these Windows test certifications, and that creates a lot of trust, which is essential for making a buying decision. And the other thing is our marketing is also super strong. And within marketing, we do a lot of very data-driven marketing. We are also we outperform with our own models what you can buy on the market. So that's something where we also elaborating or thinking more for the future what we might be able to even sell others or offer to others. For now, as we are, so you need to also focus on what you're doing, and especially in such difficult economic times like right now, even though we are doing quite well and still growing, you still also want to keep to your core business and not do too many experiments, just a very short list of experiments and be sure about how much you want to invest. But we can see also in the future that these things where we're really strong internally, we might want to go outside and also offer them to the others.
That's really cool. Yeah, I hadn't thought about the marketing tech side of it, that you've probably built this phenomenal marketing engine in addition to, being a sleep company and selling all these actual sleep products.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
That's so there's a couple of things coming together that make Emma this amazing place. As I meant, the products, the great minds. You now mentioned the sleep expertise. Yeah, we have neurobiologists working for us, really doing scientific research. You don't find that in a mattress company usually. So that's a really strong and interesting combination of skills that we have. And also we believe that there's more to come in the future. And I'm a big believer also the next years will be even more the years of sleep technology. There will be more coming regarding active sleep support.
That's awesome. Well, Andreas, before we wrap up, I always like to ask my guests, what's your favorite music to work to? Or if you ever need to focus, what's your favorite music to listen to?
It's twofold. Either classical music or dubstep.
Nice. Really on the opposite end of the spectrum there.
Pretty wide spectrum. Yeah.
I wonder if there's a crossover there, the like dubstep Beethoven or something like that. And Andreas, what's the best way for people to follow your work on social media?
Yeah, sure. So you can find all about Emma and what we do on our company website. So you can find it on team.emma-sleep.com. There you can also find our tech blog, where you can read a lot about what we've been doing in the last 2 years. We basically publicized all our architecture decision records that we took in the meantime. So we made it quite transparent because we are also growing. We are searching and seeking for more excellent talent, especially for our tech teams. Just follow us also on LinkedIn. There's a lot of content on LinkedIn. These days it's a little bit tricky to let's say to have Twitter as a main channel. We were never strong on Twitter, and now we're kind of looking at the situation, how this develops. So LinkedIn is probably the better place to follow us. And you can learn a lot about also the people working there. And to be honest about also kind of rethinking or thinking about the last 2 years. It is a super exciting environment we're in, and it's super cool to see yourself grow and be in company with such great people doing so.
That's great. Well, everyone, feel free to follow Andreas and Emma at the Emma Tech blog and on their LinkedIn. And we're going to be including all the information in the show description. So today we were chatting with Andreas about the just replatforming that has gone underway at Emma to help support, their continued growth and continued scaling. So Andreas, it has been absolutely great having you on, and I just really appreciate the time for you to join us.
Thank you very much. Yeah. It was my pleasure.
Thank you to all of our listeners as well. If you have any topics or guests you'd like to see on the show, send us an email at levelup@opslevel.com, and we'll see everybody next time. Happy building.